welcome to today's session. Our special guest today is Lou Chiu. Hello, Lou.
Hi Gemma, thanks for having me.
No worries. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Fab.
Yeah, really good.
Fab.
You?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Very excited to have you on here. Lou, for the people that don't know you, please can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Lou, and I'm a culture and relationships coach. And so actually less about boyfriend-girlfriend stuff, but more around the how do we have those relationships that we have every day that sometimes feels a bit difficult and uncomfortable. So feedback is something that we talk a lot about, and how do we get what we want without upsetting other people. But the area that I specialise in particular at the moment is supporting allies, so people who want to stand with groups and communities that they don't identify with but are particularly marginalised or vulnerable in our communities. And so yeah, lots of hard stuff, but we try and make it fun and accessible, and meaningful as we go along.
Fab. Wow. Because that's quite a big topic at the moment, isn't it? This idea of kind of supporting each other regardless of our kind of racial or cultural differences.
Yeah, and I think with our kind of current context with Black Lives Matters and Stop Asian Hate, we're really feeling it, and you know, for all of the amazing things and all of the ills that social media and the internet has, we're much more open to stories that are outside of our own. And so when we're open to that, we're experiencing this whole new world, or these other aspects of life that we've taken for granted because we were spared that injustice. So I have those privileges of being university educated, and that I have a fantastic social network in terms of friends and family. And so for those privileges, I'm heterosexual, so I don't have to worry about being able to love who I want to in public, and for the fear of violence. And so, but saying that, I have those experiences of being a woman of color, that are very different from the Black community in some cases. And so when we're learning about these stories and we want to know how to help, but we don't know how because we don't have those experiences for ourselves. I don't know what it's like to be gay. Doesn't mean that I can't help and support them, but it's about getting that balance of showing up for what they need rather than feeling like I want to save a community, because that in itself is problematic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So would you mind telling us just kind of a couple of the tips you share with people who say, look, I really want to support my friends or colleagues who are perhaps experiencing, difficulties or because of their culture. What kind of things would you suggest to people?
The first thing is pay attention to how you're feeling, because we're not. Some of us are really bad at talking about emotions, and it took me well over 30 years to get used to it. But they give us clues around where we are in this situation. And so if somebody's disclosing something to you, so harassment is a common one in the workplace, unfortunately still, then as the person receiving that disclosure, you might have, shame or guilt or anger, frustration coming through. But as soon as if you don't acknowledge those feelings, that conversation becomes about you.
Yeah.
And so just acknowledge it and then park it, because you have to remember that there is something about you and your face and the way that you are with that person that they feel safe and that they trust you to share.
Yeah.
And so being able to hold that space for them, particularly if they've just had an experience or a lifetime of small experiences that have started to add up, that the level of trust is really important to kind of build, and they've chosen you to be able to do that. And actually, you don't have to do any more than that in some cases. Just being able to listen, and go, do you know what? You're not going mad. You're not oversensitive. This kind of institutional gaslighting that I'm talking a lot about with organisations, that's your experience. It's valid. Sometimes that's enough. But yeah, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. It is, of course it is. But in that moment, when somebody is talking to you about something that is really important to them, that doesn't have to be as scary as it is in your head. Like, that's the first thing. That's the first thing.
No, absolutely. That's fantastic. Thank you. So coming back to these kind of everyday interactions and relationships, what kind of got you into that line of work? What is it that interests you about it?
Oh, all of it, I think. I think from that kind of psychotherapeutic hat on, so much of it kind of came from my own upbringing, my own childhood. Growing up, 2 Chinese at school, 2 English at home, I never quite fit. And so from a really young age, it was just trying to make sense of how I fit in the world. What do I need to do to integrate? And not being able to have these conversations was really, really difficult for me and my sense of well-being. And so that constant negotiation, I know teenage years are a nightmare anyway in terms of trying to figure out who you are. But with these added dimensions that I physically don't look like anyone else that I went to school with, meant that it had those other challenges, not being able to communicate with my community at home or the wider Chinese community, because I was losing some of my English, my Chinese as I was growing up. And so by the time I got to university, where I could look at it from an academic point of view, and then being able to kind of study interactions and seeing how it plays out in other people. And I'm a massive people watcher. And so, yeah, I loved how it came out in terms of storytelling. And I grew up a massive geek, comic books, video games, a lot. And so how do those behaviors then translate across, and where does conflict come up? And so, yeah, it ended up being ingrained in all of my different kind of areas of interest, and I was just fascinated. And some of it was, so the allyship work in particular was partly because I wanted to support those communities that I don't belong to, so Black Lives Matters, but at the same time, there was the sense of self-preservation, because the experiences of those communities might not be the same, but they're rooted in the same place, comes from the same history. So yeah, some of it's a bit selfish. The more allies there are in the world, my life is a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a kind of sort of pay it forward cycle there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Brill. Just picking up on this idea of conflict then, because it's something that you've mentioned a couple of times. Over the past, just over 12 months, we spent an awful lot of time at home together. I imagine that that's kind of sparked a little more conflict perhaps than usual. How do you kind of advise people around managing conflict?
The first thing that I would kind of mention is do your own work first. And so, why does it annoy me that my other half can't put the laundry away properly? We have this conversation, so it's not, I'm not picking on him behind his back. you know, why does that annoy me? And so for him, the work is, what is it? Why does this behavior affect me in this way?
Mhm.
And I'm really lucky. My partner's incredible. And from the very beginning, we had this mantra of own your own stuff. Like, if something's going wrong, work out if it's your baggage first.
Yeah.
So is it from our own insecurities? Does it come from a place of, you know, wanting to feel valued, wanting to feel like you're loved, wanting to be seen? Does it come from that? And then the conversation that you're having then becomes about this deeper thing, this underlying issue, rather than, I'm going to strangle you if you can't hang those socks up properly. Then we're just dealing with the surface level.
Yeah.
And if it, you know, and it shows that you put in that work, that you're invested in the relationship enough to know, to go, I've done my bit, and I feel like I can articulate it a bit better now for you. Can we have this conversation? And we talk a lot about consent in terms of kind of sexual relationships, but actually consent, it's applicable to so many different things. We might be in different headspaces, and I know that that's one of the really tricky things, when our home and work boundaries are completely blurred.
Yeah.
And so very commonly I'm hearing this, they just won't, I come out of the office and then they just won't stop talking about their work, and I'm just not in the headspace for it. We used to have a commute to buffer that,
Mm-hmm.
that we don't anymore. And so just being kind and going, okay, well, this is the thing, this is the behavior that I'm struggling with, and it's your old school, talk about the behavior and not the person. But there's some truth in it. Our behaviors have changed. It's our ways of adapting to this new situation that we're in, our heightened sense of anxiety. You know, the people, if we're lucky to choose who we live with, we've chosen them for a reason. And so, yeah, know that the space is negotiable, but we know but we want to show that we're invested, and we're not just lashing out because we're tired and we're sick of seeing their faces, because they're the only face that we can see, and there's a whole million people out there that we would much rather see right now. Like, sure, you can feel like that and you can process that, but is it something that's, is there a need that you have that isn't being met? Access that and then have that conversation about it, and then you can build rules. So yeah, we have our own rules in our house, and we're still working on them because things change. So we check in. So I would always recommend to check in when you're not both wound up and tired.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. So how can people find out, you know, a little bit more about what you do? How can people get in touch with you?
So my website is Lou Chiu, so Louchiu. I can't spell my own name at the moment. So louchiu.com. I am on social media, so you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, although I am not as vocal these days on those platforms, because as Gemma knows, I'm in the midst of my dissertation at the moment, so all of my writing is kind of focused on there, but I am there. You can see the work that I'm doing, but my website is the best place, or you can drop me an email if you want to have a chat at hello@louchiu.com.
Fab. Thank you so much, Lou. It's been absolutely lovely to have you and to see you again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to see you, Gemma, and thank you for this awesome work that you're doing. Really important.
Very welcome. So that was our session today with Lou Chiu. Please join us next time. Please like, subscribe, leave us a comment if you like, and we'll see you next time.